How does an art god become one? With all the things they needed to learn, a lot of fellow artists may be wondering about the same thing. How do these art gods approach each topic? Improving a lot while being self-taught can be very rewarding and is something to be proud of. But there is one thing that makes it very hard to achieve, which is the sheer amount of information you need to absorb and filter all on your own. You have to spend a lot of time researching, trying stuff and failing, repeating the process to see what works for you, and figuring out what explanation is the easiest for you to wrap your head around. But in the sea of a million art tips, there is one consistent thing: the fundamentals. They can be applied to anything else you want to draw, and every professional artist always emphasizes their importance. Now one might ask, how do you learn fundamentals? A good way to learn about them is reading, because these principles or rules don't really change, but the only thing that differs among different sources is how easy they are to understand and how in-depth they are explained. To a beginner, the concepts can be very hard to grasp, especially if one doesn't have much experience drawing while applying these fundamentals. The great news is there are professionals out there who tackle all these subjects in one comprehensive course, from perspective to color to form to light, which means you get to hear their interpretation of the rules and to what extent they apply these rules to their work. I'm talking about art gods out there like Mogoon, who teaches all this at a platform called Coloso. In this video, I'm doing a collaboration with Coloso, a platform where professional artists from different industries share their in-depth knowledge and their own little tips of how they approach their process. If you are familiar with Mogoon, you'd think he's naturally gifted judging by the speed and quality in which he puts out artwork, but he doesn't consider himself as such, and thus felt the need to supplement his skills by studying all the nitty-gritty details behind the art rules every artist raves about. I think this emphasizes that behind every insanely good artist, there is someone with hours upon hours of active practice and studying. And all that studying paid off, because Mogoon has an impressive understanding of the things he applies in his work, to the extent that he can confidently share his own interpretation of these art rules. His class not only has almost 24 hours of lecture videos, it also includes downloadable PSD files that he used in his classes, where he demonstrated his workflow and discussed how he paints different textures. There are lots of skills involved in illustration, and there's no doubt that having all of these topics discussed by a professional whose work you admire will save you a lot of time instead of trying to figure everything out by yourself. The time factor is one thing, but the understanding part is also another problem you encounter when you're self-taught. To add to that, from a teaching perspective, explaining something in a way that makes someone understand it in layman's terms is difficult to do without getting rid of some nuances. But somehow Mogoon does a pretty good job at this. The way he explains the concepts induces enough curiosity that makes you want to practice drawing boxes in perspective and makes you want to stare into the reflections of light in the mug to observe the way light behaves. For instance, he not only explains and demonstrates how light works, he also goes the extra mile to explain why light behaves a certain way in different situations, which results to a difference in brightness between planes. He is incredibly detailed in the way he goes about these concepts, despite his awareness that anyone's initial thought when they see a good illustration is just how good it looks. But it is precisely because of this idea that he emphasizes the importance of the foundation. For something to look convincing, there has to be some grasp on real-world phenomena. This is why even people who don't draw can easily spot errors in art. When something looks slightly crooked and you're able to spot it even without much drawing skill, that was made possible by your intuition. Mogoon emphasizes that a lot of beginners rely on what feels right when drawing, and that's a common thing that comes with inexperience. But I like how he says that if it ends in spotting the error and you still don't know how to fix it, the process of making art is going to be much harder. This reinforces the idea that knowing the reason why something works can always help you in the long run. I think there's never a bad time to work on the different aspects of your illustration skills, because they are all interconnected. As Mogoon says, it's hard to be good at different types of lighting if you don't have an understanding of volume. It's also hard to draw a human body without having even a little understanding of perspective or shape manipulation. The amount of fundamental knowledge and practice has an effect on the quality and pace at which you can produce art. Mogoon only has this insane speed and quality because he has gone the extra mile to understand a lot of whys and principles behind art rules that other people leave to intuition or choose to ignore. which may make them think that art is only for the talented, a misconception. Mogoon's analytical approach towards art lays a solid base for any artist and is what makes his decision-making precise and fast. His curriculum lays down the theoretical stuff beforehand, which prevents you from solely relying on intuition. But what I like most about this is Mogoon's emphasis on flexibility. As he says, even if your fundamentals are good and you draw something perfectly calculated, if it doesn't look appealing or if it doesn't match your goal, the artwork loses its charm. While he emphasizes the importance of fundamentals, he also reminds us not to be overly obsessed with it. Rather, he encourages us to use it to our advantage. I personally think that seeing an artist's process is always beneficial, especially if you don't know where to start and you feel overwhelmed by all the steps you need to take. Of course, it isn't guaranteed that Mogoon's methods will work as well for you as it does for him, but it can serve as a blueprint for you to try and gives you an idea of the steps that you can incorporate in your workflow or study plan. And if it doesn't work for you, you can always supplement your knowledge with multiple sources. As Mogoon would say in his course, it is always good to question the information presented to you. Critical thinking is also a part of making art, as we make lots of little decisions to make our artwork look good. What color to use, how much contrast to add, what perspective to use. Given what I just said, one should not expect to understand everything and be able to apply them immediately. Just like how it is with every skill, you can't expect the studying to be over after one class. Professional artists are bound to study throughout their whole career, which sounds depressing, but this constant strive for improvement is also what makes them improve consistently. Now, if I would recommend Mogoon's class to anyone, it would ideally be the intermediate or upper beginner level artists, and to the artists who want a theoretical approach to understand the reasoning behind artistic techniques, because his class has more of an in-depth and scientific approach to the why questions that go beyond the how questions. In my opinion, if you still don't know most of the basics, like how to manipulate simple shapes or drawing lines properly, it's better to study those on your own first and then have this as a supplementary resource so that you can get the most value out of it. The reason why I think that is because if you're very new to illustration and you immediately study in-depth theories rather than how-to approaches, you're more likely to be overwhelmed by how hard the concepts are and end up getting discouraged. Some of the topics discussed can be pretty intimidating for a beginner, which is why I think this course fits best for people who have studied some amount on their own and only want a deeper understanding behind all these fundamentals. Lastly, if I were to nitpick about the contents of the curriculum, I think there could have been a better discussion about color. To me, color is so complicated and is something that can have a whole separate class by itself. But because this class covered a lot of other topics, it was understandable that it wasn't as prioritized as the other ones. Considering all these things, I don't see anything bad in giving this course a try, especially if you want to invest in content that will help you improve your art skills. I can say that Mogoon's class offers a whole lot of value to anyone interested in seeing the process behind an art god's skills. The skills that resulted to his appealing art style that is rendered somewhat semi-realistically, but also in a light manner that caters to a wide range of anime art enthusiasts. That's all for this video. Thank you Coloso for the collab, and thank you to whoever's watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.